most part, I mean, Clem is as top-notch as it gets, and in this matchup, in my opinion, perhaps the best in the world. Let's see. Spawning in the top right-hand side of the map as the blue Zerg player, it's Serral.
And he faces, in the bottom left, a red Terran player. He is Clem.
I can't wait for this match to unfold as it will. I mean, this could be the finals of the tournament, and no one would be upset or surprised. Clem has won the last 4 times. Yeah, many times. Yeah, I mean, this should be a banger.
Oh yeah, for sure. And you know, when we talk about why we love to watch these players, Serral, very fast, good reactive scouting style, loves to have info early on, great with the backstabs, great with the link control. And then Clem, well, he's just faster than anybody else.
Yeah, exactly.
He doesn't make mistakes. It's like watching, you know, you've got your regular cast of heroes, and you're like, oh yeah, I like Big Gabe. He's big, he's gigantic, right? And you're like, oh, I love you, Thermal. He does anime memes. But then you look at Clem and you're like, oh, he's the guy that runs really fast. And you're like, well, it's that. How much of a superpower is that? Well, in most scenarios, it's the most overpowered one. And in StarCraft, that is also true. Being fast is generally a good thing to be, as we see people struggle to keep up with his multi-prong harass, his non-stop pushes, and of course his swift and deft micro when it comes to focus firing units that get too close, like banelings, and especially key targets like those. He's very good at making those clicks on. Just really, really mechanically dominant player in the European StarCraft scene.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, when you talk about speed, you have to talk about Clem. You have to talk perhaps about Raynor as well on the flip side. But that is not to take away from their brilliance. We were just watching Max Packs, which seems to me oftentimes like the opposite in terms of like refinement of mechanics, versus Clem, who, like you said, on the micro front hardly ever makes or seems to make mistakes. And that is impressive, not just because of the speed that it takes for execution, but the speed that you need to make the right decisions and to execute them as well. Tactically, he is an absolute genius. There's nothing more pleasurable to me in terms of micro than watching Clem. He is just absolutely one of the greatest of all time. But where things can slip is what we were giving credit for to Max Packs in the previous series, I think, right? Like, he can be over-eager. I think that if you could somehow merge Clem with Big Gabe, you'd have I guess like a slightly bigger Big Gabe.
If something that big could move that fast, Cats, I'll be honest, I think if he accidentally trips, he'll knock the Earth out of orbit and will crash into the sun. So we need to be a little bit careful. But I agree that combining those skill sets, well, that would be truly terrifying.
You would have you would have just the best of all worlds. You would have basically like perhaps a more complete Maru or something of the likes, right? Like, I say that, and I know some people are gonna get upset, but yeah, I mean, Clem is incredible when it comes to those things, and that's where, against Mutiling Bane, keeping up with Clem, you know, that's what you have to do. Is it's that tug of war, and you're pulling a rope against one of the strongest players out there in that front. You can't really outpace him, and that is where he shows his biggest strength. So I hope for Serral that he's ready for this. But I think 5 out of the last 6 times, all of 2021, Serral has won once in this matchup, and maps, if I'm not mistaken, was something like 4-15 in favor of Clem.
It is weird too, because Clem was one of the players that we were still talking about, as you know, we go through these cycles, like it's like a 2 or 3 year cycle when it comes to a player that's actually getting better and improving. And at first it was Serral, and we were like, oh yeah, Serral, everybody's talking about how good he is. Then he just went and won every event for a whole year, and then won the world championship, and everyone's like, this has literally never happened before. We've never had a non-Korean win a world championship in StarCraft 2, and it was without a doubt one of the craziest things. And then all of a sudden the cycle repeated itself with Raynor, and we're like, oh, he looks like he's going to be the one beating Serral, and then eventually he did, and he was he grabbed that mantle world championship. And Clem has been on a similar sort of rise, although I think he's been competitive for quite a while now, even since the end of last year. One of the top guys, with one of the first premier tournament wins for a non-Korean Terran player in several years. So it really is just, these players all push each other up, and they're all constantly getting better, and it just makes for good StarCraft to watch.
I mean, 4 European championships in a row against Serral and Raynor. that have been as dominant on the international scene as they have been in the European scene, I think that is in its own right record breaking from Clem. I think that he is a world-class player. The problem, I think, for him is stylistically, for example, I don't think he matches well against a lot of the Koreans who are more willing than Europeans in general to show with that aggression, with the lower tier compositions. They're not looking oftentimes for perfect play, but they will look to exploit your weaknesses much more so than Europeans tend to do, where they always seem to be kind of honing their best play and maneuvers and endlessly sharpening a sword to then stab you with it eventually.
Yeah, the historical importance of the broadsword, I guess, right, kind of comes into play there. It's all about just mastering the art of that combat, and we see a lot of the stylistically players really just, as you said, prioritize clean play, trying to play perfectly as best as they can. These Hellions are going to get split off in the medevac, so I assume he might try to get a cheeky drop in the main while the Marines just pressure the front.
Yeah, but I mean, there's roaches, right? Like, very notably, Nate. We've been talking about this. This is Serral adapting.
Yeah, as I was going to say, he's mostly just killed a couple of the creep tumors Clem has, but Serral is just kind of, I feel like as we've been talking through this game, he's just been like kind of on autopilot. He's like, yeah, I'm good. I'm getting all my stuff up. You're going to try to attack me? Meh, not really worried about it. I've got a bunch of roaches. I've got Carapace finishing, so your Marines, not super scary. And whatever Zerglings he's had are already just chilling, waiting in the main base. Hellions are going to get dropped in between the extractor and the mineral patch. I mean, this is just good play by Clem, recognizing the positional opportunity, but there's still a ton of units here to deal with them anyway, including that queen. And so the Hellbat little attack is routed. More roaches are coming in, and we talked about this, but the lair's been done for a while. Roach speed has been done for a little bit at 7 minutes. So he is in a position to really bring it to him, and he's going straight into Hive at 7 minutes, cats.
Yeah, I mean, that's extremely interesting. I love that Serral does choose to go for the Roach opener. Again, one of the advantages of playing against a hyper-aggressive player is if they run into you all the time and you have one of the better defensive units and they're looking to trade themselves, right? Like, you don't have the problem of scaling that you often have with Roaches, etc. But Serral perhaps anticipating that Clem will adapt himself, that he will be willing to play the more positional game, because that's what we're looking for Clem to do, right? So Serral, I think, already given respect to Clem, does transition into a very, very fast Hive. I love that he makes infestors. I mean, we see that unit so rarely, it feels like, even when people do go for the Ravager Roach or Ultra compositions later on.
Yeah, we'll have to keep our eyes open for whether or not there's a big, fat, juicy fungal. There are some Ravagers. He's not really like committed a huge amount to them. Of course, we know Ravagers are expensive. The cost to upgrade the Roach into them is not something to scoff at. And since the Lurker Den is coming in and he's building Hydralisks, Serral's just getting immediately ready for that Lurker phase of the game where he can shut down the big bio pushes and kind of force Clem into taking awkward fights, make him try to drop a little bit more on the outside, and eventually creep up with those Lurkers onto one of these bases. But it takes a while for the Lurkers to come online. So Clem's got a big army. He's moving out. He's got his +1 armor about to finish up, but Cat, look at the +2 Carapace for Serral. These Roaches are going to be hard to kill for him if he gets into a fight soon.
Yeah, for sure. But like you said, Clem has a huge army. I mean, Serral, to his credit, his creep spread has been stellar here. But Clem, I think this is a decent way to do it, right? Like, he wasn't over-aggressive. He wasn't hyper-aggressive, like a lot of his faults that we have attributed to that style of play. This game, he was very, very, very patient indeed. However, a lot of his army has already been mitigated as far as the bio buffer, and Serral with a beautiful Ling run by here as well onto the third mineral line of a Clem that I think was patient, but still, I mean, Serral now is up to Lurkers, and he's looking to deflect this, Nate.
Now, the siege tanks in the back are still kind of covering for this bio a little bit, but that +2 Carapace finished up, so you have the upgrade advantage in favor of Serral, making these Roaches and Ravagers very chonky against the siege tanks in the bio. Well, I guess the tanks will still do decent damage. But look at this spread. Gets the Lurkers to come in from the left side. And of course, if you're Clem, you want to target fire those down. So he gets 2 of them in exchange for all of the tanks. And he's going to bio the tank up on the high ground as well. And we have to keep in mind, of course, eventually those infestors will get a little bit of energy back. The hard part is over. He's got the Lurkers. He has the range upgrade. And once Adaptive Talons is done, the Lurkers become infinitely more difficult to deal with. But he could just bio this command center down, hold the top of the ramp. There's not a lot Clem can do. Serral's played a very clean game.
Very much so. I mean, yeah,
there's a Lurker in the third?
Wow. 3 Lurkers at the third, actually, like just providing coverage against anything that might happen in those chokes and just
GG.
sieging Clem. And GG will be called. A mostly uneventful game, but I mean, Serral just.
It's so weird. Yeah, well, it's very weird to commentate and just see a game that plays out in that way, where Serral's like, yep, gonna do a defensive build, gonna be greedy, gonna get at my tech, gonna take bases. Nothing that you do is going to damage me. Clem wanted to do like a little Marine Hellbat attack, but as you pointed out, there were a bunch of roaches. They had roach speed really early on, and they had just what felt like a setup that was not going to be attackable at all. I mean, Clem was not able to do anything that game. And then as soon as Serral had what he wanted, he's like, all right, I'm going to kill you now. So I feel like we're seeing a little bit of what was Rainer saying earlier. It's like, yeah, I think it's going to be a pretty clean bop. Well, wow. Clem riding the struggle bus in that first map.
Yeah, but he was riding the struggle bus that he has been riding in the matchup against roaches, right? I'm not sure that Serral will choose to go roaches every game, but already kind of a cool adaptation from Clem to previous Clems that we have seen be over aggressive and kind of kill himself against the roaches. This time he sits back and he waits for 170 or so supply. I was thinking like I would love to see a 200 move out of Clem. It ends up being a little bit earlier than that, but I didn't mind it. I thought it was good. Like he looked to kind of merge his entire army before moving out, right? And even in those final moments, if Serral doesn't get, Serral did, I mean, an amazing job, A, of creep spread to slow him down, right? Like B, of positioning and just taxing the units of Clem so that the tanks would never be able to siege to contribute to the engagement. So it was always Ravager Roach against Bio without the tanks until Clem was to get in position, right? Like if those tanks are helping there, obviously it goes very different. By the time the tanks siege, there's barely any Bio left. So there was also a crucial moment towards the end of that game where Serral, in the moment that he collapsed onto Clem's army, he had his entire army versus Clem's half of an army, right? So if the other half that arrives like 5 seconds later actually merges with Clem's army, things get all of a sudden a lot scarier again for Serral. So that game looking, it looked very, very clean from Serral, but it could have definitely gotten messy if he didn't hit such a perfect timing onto the army there in the middle.
Oh, definitely. There were some small opportunities, it felt like, but just wasn't really able to jump on any of them. Let's see if he can turn it around in this second game. In the northwest position of Lightshade, we have the Red Terran representing Team Liquid. He is Clem.
And in the bottom right-hand side, it is, in both of our opinions, I think, the GOAT, Serral. One of these days I'll have to make a stronger argument than just saying it. But I mean, yeah, what Serral has done is just unprecedented in my opinion. And yeah, I mean, that's why he has earned the nickname from me, at least. And I think from you, Nate.
For what it's worth, Cats, I do believe that you are a much better expert and judge of skill in StarCraft than the average person that would argue against Serral being the GOAT with no evidence. Dude's pretty based. Gotta be honest. He's a torchbearer for the foreign scene, and when I think about the impact that Serral as a player has had on competitive StarCraft, I think of it as close to, but perhaps even bigger than Stefano's, where Stefano was a big time hotshot foreigner, very funny to see in interviews. Obviously, a different personality style than Serral, but had the same impact, right? He inspired a generation of players, and after him, there were a lot of folks that were coming up. They were saying, "Yeah, man, I'm inspired by Stefano. He makes me want to do this. He makes being a StarCraft pro look cool, and he's out there kicking butt, getting kicked out of bars, and some of those parties are pretty fun.
Police.
Some of those parties got pretty fun. Not gonna lie, but I do believe that having players like Serral is important because, as much as you might want to say about anybody else that's ever accomplished anything, having the ability to shape the next generation and, make people be like, oh, well, it's like, nobody can be the Koreans in StarCraft. It's a waste of time to try. But having somebody that can do it and that does it that first time and wins that world championship, you're shattering the ceiling for what a non-Korean StarCraft player is expected to be capable of. And I think that regardless of whether or not you want to say he's not as good as he was the day he won the world championship, sure, whatever. It's a pretty terrible argument to make because literally everybody gets old and gets worse at stuff no matter what you do. But the fact that he did it first And he set the chain reaction of creating players that were actually able to step up to his level and surpass him without being incapable of competing outside of Europe is to me a huge achievement, right? I don't think you get players that are as good as Raynor. I don't think you get players that are as good as Clem without having someone that says, hey, all this time and effort is worth it because it is possible in the first place.
Yeah, Serral definitely paving the way for a lot of players there. And now Clem paving his way into his natural base. Very daring, actually. Seeing the number of links here, he's gonna venture on forward, but one of the drones actually snipes the Hellion, and that's just
a pretty good grab.
Things. I mean, that drone was amazing, but still, he is going up against one of the best micro players in the world in his own right. So 2 additional workers will follow in the main. The 2 links get taken down. And on his way out, and for the investment, I mean, given all things, Clem getting 3 workers, not the worst outcome. At the same time, in the natural base, 2 more Hellions are making their ways. Make that 3-7, make that 7-9 for 4 Hellions. And this early on, the young Terran has to be feeling pretty okay, Nate.
Yeah, that's a nice number of drones to get. You're like, whoa, okay. First Hellion getting caught going in is tough. And there's always some degree of risk when you throw your Hellions away against players like Serral, like Raynor, because you know that they're going to try to use Zerglings a lot throughout the series to catch you, backstab. Even though the last game was, a Roach game into Ravagers with Lurkers as this Liberator switches up on the third, going to get 1 drone, but to quickly finish. Even though he's known for doing this, he can still do it when he's not playing a Ling Bane composition, is what I'm getting at. He still was able to get the Ling run bys even while he was defending with Roach's last game. So if you're any Terran and you're up against specifically Serral or Raynor, they are always going to hit you with those run bys. A huge part of your game plan, the actual plan itself, has to include measures that will be able to, reduce how much of that is going to kill you.
Definitely bunkers or leaving reinforcements preemptively or not moving out with your entire army. I mean, difficult decisions to make and difficult decisions to make constantly as well, right? Especially when you're up against the clock, and surely you want your entire army against the likes of the same players that are some of the best defensive players in their own right. And that's why it's so very difficult to beat them, right? Like they're kind of just doing everything that they need to do oftentimes. But one player that does outpace them from time to time is Clem, and that last game was Roaches, but this game for the time being, Nate, it's not. And whenever there's a Roach more now. Serral.
Yeah, he's going for it, and Spore Crawler has to reposition a little bit awkwardly as the Hellions move over towards the third base. There's a lot of creep here though, so these Speedlings are kind of doing a little tappy toes dance back and forth just so the Hellions don't try to run beyond the Queens, and almost killing a few of them too. That Liberator still being a little bit tenacious at that main. Send her back, get the repairs, fix them up, and then go do some more harassing. Well, the Liberators are, of course, always going to be good defensively, especially versus Roaches and Ravagers. You get a little less overkill if it's picking off Roaches, right? 2-shotting those bad boys instead of dealing, 70 damage to a 20 hit point Ling. Not bad value to keep that Liberator alive as long as possible in this game.
Yeah. Nate, this is such a scary Serral because it's a Serral that in my mind is playing to his opponent's deficiencies rather than necessarily just his own strength, which is normally what we see from Serral, but he's gonna get caught here, so hold that thought. A couple of Queens almost going down. The micro on both ends is fantastic, and now the Queens with the bigger concave are gonna force this army to at least wait for the reinforcements. Now tank on the high ground as well as medevacs. That tank has not been spotted, but now it will be. So it will only get to shell at the Queens twice before a reposition is forced. However, Nate, tanks on the high ground, very, very strong units, but you are going up against Roaches, a very, very strong unit defensively in their own right.
Yeah, biggest thing is he's going to try and go for a backstab with the Lings. Yeah. They come up the ramp, get the siege tank that's on the high ground. That tank will still shoot a few times, but he gets killed, and as does the one on the bottom. So then suddenly the Roach Ravager against just Marines, well, without combat shield, you're almost 2-tapping them. So yeah, that upgrade, of course, does finish right now, but not during the fight. So the 1-1 is done for Clem. Serral is just a little bit behind. You don't want to force the issue just yet, because that's a little bit of an anti-timing. But aside from that, not a bad place to be.
Yeah, Nate, I don't know if you ever watch any Counter-Strike. I certainly do from time to time. And like that really just felt like that type of maneuver. Like Counter-Strike can be a very timing-oriented game where you're actually looking for openings to run behind your opponents or like to look for them, right? And Serral just making the decision to go around and get those tanks with the circling so early that Clem is just completely out of position. I think you give Clem an extra 5 seconds, and he has the army in position, the bio in that choke to protect the tank of the high ground because he realizes that this is a possibility. But this time it wasn't so. The Ravagers are gonna go on forward and try to snipe a tank, so maybe Serral with a little bit of an overcommitment in his own right. 2 tanks maybe not expected in the backline, and Clem with a Liberator as well. Nate, things are looking up again for the Terran.
Return of the Liberator, Cats, and that's a great way to really just get under Serral's skin, just forcing him to have to look back and react. Actually will kill that queen, and possibly, oh, I saw that turret turn. He's looking for the drone. Says, go ahead, step into range. The Liberator gets away. Nope. Okay, I was gonna say if that got away, that would be quite painful. Serral is gonna morph a bunch more roaches. He's got a couple of the queens here too outside the natural. So while Clem wants to move back across the map, Serral's saying, I'm gonna try and kill you. Drops a couple of the bios, 1 tank down, second popped, and then he's gonna move towards that natural expansion where there are no siege tanks, but still Marines and Marauders with medevacs. There's a lot of damage output. He needs everything here if he wants to break this, but I don't think that he has enough. This army from Serral, I think Clem should just be able to collapse on this, right?
Yeah, but the problem is the army of Clem on the other side, and that is what allows for Serral to even get in this position at all. Serral does not want to save this base. Do not fight for that base, my friend. I mean, he's not paying attention here right now. Very uncharacteristic, and Serral will actually force 2GG Clem with the game to equalize.
Liberator's OP, Cats. Look at that. Distracts him, creates the opportunity, buys a little bit of time, delays the push on the natural, and gets one of those queens and those drones, making the later defense of that next push even more difficult. But Clem, good tenacity shown in this game. And I think we really get to see just, you know, that kind of game plan work out where the Hellions got the 9 drones early on. And that was enough to put Clem in a position where all he had to do was just hit his macro timings, don't get supply blocked, keep the production cycles going on the barracks. And he just had an overwhelming number of Marines. Pretty common is if you're not able to get up to that lurker infestor tech like we had in game 1, if the Terran player is able to get up to that 140, 150 bio supply, Roach Ravager just straight up sucks.
Yeah, it really gets worse and worse, and that's why I didn't mind the approach that we saw from Clem in the previous map. And yeah, I mean, what I love, and I was ready to praise from Serral, and I was ready to say maybe this is a 3-0 if he wins that last game, is that Serral, again, is playing to the weaknesses or perceived weaknesses of his opponent, right? Going for the Roaches 2 games in a row. This is a very Korean-like Zerg thing to do, right? Like Rogue will not play the fancy pretty styles or even to the map or anything. He will play what will him games. And that is a Serral that I am not too familiar with, because usually Serral is strong enough that he feels like the strongest player in the world, and oftentimes he makes that statement. He says, "Come at me, I am strong at every stage of the game, and you know, no matter what, I'm gonna look good." And then he mixes up builds, he plays to the maps, etc., etc. This time, 2 Roaches in a row, and the series just got a lot more exciting because Clem actually showed Serral that he can actually deal with Roaches. So yeah, this is gonna be good.
Yeah, series is heating up, getting interesting, staying exciting. You know, after what Rainer said earlier about our boy over here in the top left, I was like, man, the disrespect on this man's name. But he's cleaned it up. He's looked good, and now things are tied up. He is Team Liquid's Clem.
And in the bottom right-hand side, it is Serral for ends. Yeah, and Nate, I mean, yeah, I think that there is something to what Raynor was saying, but we've seen it in Denver, right? Like a little bit of less activity doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be playing worse. A lot of the time, it can just be to ease stress or relieve stress, to not overthink things a lot of the time. A lot of the time, maybe you just think that practice one day beforehand is not going to make a huge difference either, right? And it probably won't. I mean, Clem has played thousands, hundreds of thousands perhaps of games, right? So I mean, does he really need to be online prior to every big match? I don't think that's necessarily the case, and I don't think that necessarily dictates or should speak too much to what form he's going to be in.
No, and it's always a question mark type thing, because if there's one thing that we can say when it comes to, oh, I don't see this person on, or I don't know what they're doing. Is there anybody that plays StarCraft seriously? And I'm not even just talking about pros at this point, because Cats 10 years in, 11 years in, whatever. I mean, and anybody that's still grinding regularly at the top of the ladder has what, a dozen accounts or so that they're bouncing between across all the servers. You've got your barcode name, you've got your one's a barcode, the other is your one that's just for tournaments, the other's your JoJo meme account, and then you've got 3 more barcodes just in case somebody figured out who you were because they looked at the replay and checked your control groups, and now they won't stop DMing you. I think that it's fair to say that just because you don't necessarily know how much someone is up to doesn't mean that they're not doing anything.
And there's also the aspect of thinking, there's the aspect of planning, there's the aspect of relaxing, of not being tense, of not being, if you're feeling the pressure, that can be one of the best solutions oftentimes is one day before, maybe just take a breather, So yeah, we never know completely what's going on there. But what we do know is this series is shaping up to be an incredible one between these two.
Hell yeah. And we're on Romanticide. So as far as maps go, defensive, greedy setups. Serral's drone over here. I mean, if he wants to just get up to that 4th, like Clem's already got his 3rd command center going up inside of his main base, and the Hellion production is going to begin too. So he's fully set up. Yeah, there's not really anything here to deal with these handful of lings. It's not like it's a scary amount, but you do have to wait for those Hellions to get to that next step, and didn't quite have the money to start them immediately because he started the gas and his natural super fast, which not something that you would typically say is common, but he only had 1 gas in his main, so it's not like he's doing something crazy.
Yeah, uncharacteristic, I suppose you could call it mistake from Serral to let the gas at that 4th base finish. Of course, he was preoccupied with his link, so a lot of the time it's a difficult decision to make. You just allocate your resources, your attention to what you think is the most worth it, and he was threatening a mule there. So if he gets that mule, all of a sudden it's much better to make sure that you do that than losing the drone in that gas effectively for the time being. So yet still a little bit of a mistake there from Serral, who had just had a really cool move with the drone juking the Reaper in the first place, because the Reaper was, it can get close enough to the gas that you can't rebuild it. So that's what Clem was looking to do, but since Serral kind of faked, and I mean, there's a lot of really cool stuff happening already in this very early game.
Yeah, could not agree anymore. It's been a little bit of a weird one. I mean, hey, worst case scenario, it's not like that extractor doesn't give some vision, right? It's like a 25 mineral ward you can just put down, and there you go. If anybody flies over you towards your natural, you've got one of the angles covered. Overlord is going to see the medevac load up and move out, and perhaps more interestingly, Clem has a 2nd factory on the way already here, Caps.
That is extremely interesting indeed. It will get spotted as well, Nate, but I mean, this 2nd factory, it surely will lead us to think that Clem is willing to go mech here. There is an add-on onto the barracks for now, but there hasn't been Stim or Combat Shields research, for instance. So this is indeed going to be very interesting. Medevac first, but only to drop Widow Mines, and Clem already has a pretty good economic situation going with the 3rd orbital already up as well. So a very interesting, unique approach. Both players showing us new things here.
Yeah, it's not something that we see tremendously often. I can imagine that since he's been continuing to build mines, that his game plan might just be get drilling claws really quickly and rely on the armory finishing so that the Widow Mines just, remain cloaked after they fire. And he could put a bunch of mines all over the map, just kind of cover that way. He still has medevacs, so maybe, crazily enough, we're looking at something that could be a bit more like what Mark Schloppy was going for the other day with some crazy mech plays and big drops against Raynor on this map.
Yeah. Could we see some sort of an odd bio switch here, Nate? I mean, there is another Tekla build on the barracks. There is only 1 barracks for the time being.
He's added more. Yeah, you're right.
There we go. It is going to be mech into bio kind of thing, or at least 2 factory into bio.
I think he just wants to use a lot of mines. He's going to have tanks at home for the roaches, but mines that he can be aggressive with, because this honestly might just be a really smart adjustment from Clem, where he says, okay, I haven't really been able to attack you on the ground. The Roach Ravager has been very good defensively. The creep spread's been too good. But I mean, that's not exactly where this game's headed anyway.
Yeah, this is an all-in from Serral. I mean, talk about small adjustments, right? Like, yeah, this is gigantic, and it's a great decision as well, because the mines are not going to do well against Ravagers at all. Of course, Serral wants to timely with those snipes. The tank is not yet sieged in the back, and this is looking fantastic already for Serral, willing to do something like this. So scary in a CV. Oh, but that last tank shot! Oh my god, that was massive. It kills like 3 Ravagers. Will it be enough? The last tank falls. There's not enough repair on this bunker, and Clem is forced to GG.
That's the hard part about doing weird builds like that, Cats, is if you're like, okay, I'm going to build 2 factories, but I'm not going mech. I'm actually going to just build an extra couple of barracks while we're at the, 6.5 minute mark. But I think that's just a really good read by Serral, because like he's been opening roaches and building some Ravagers every game. He hasn't really been forcing needless aggression, but he was like, you're being way too greedy. I can tell that this is a funky build. I can probably just kill you. And it worked. So really good play by Serral as he moves up 2-1 in this best of 5. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to take a quick break. When we return, we will get you to the conclusion of Serral versus Clem. Hello, gamers. We're back. It's okay. We didn't finish the match without you. We waited. We know you had that 10 seconds left on your microwave dinner. It is totally understandable. We haven't even started the game. We were waiting just for you to get back. So welcome. I'm Nate. This is my buddy Katz. We're going to talk to you about the rest of this series, which has been a nice little back and forth, Katz, but some short games. I'd like to see one of these get, real down and dirty, as Pig would say, really stretched out in the mud. And yeah, that's right. I want there to be so much mud that it's not like it ends quickly, but neither of them can see, and they kind of flail around for a little bit trying to get back to their position, and we don't really get into that standardish setup until maybe the 32-minute mark.
Yeah, I mean, that game was absolutely nasty, and we can talk about it a little bit more in a second. As spawning in the bottom left-hand side for ENCE, one of the greatest players of all time, it's Serral.
And his opponent in the Northeast, spawning as the red Terran player representing Team Liquid, he is Clem.
So yeah, Nate, let's put it into perspective. Like Clem's perspective, Clem expectations with that build. Like, what does he want to do in the previous game? Maybe.
Well, you know, my favorite person to defer to, because Roddy always brings this up to me. He seems to think that it is the greatest strategy invented for Terran, and it's the speed mine drop. So you get the whole point of it is he couldn't really push on the ground against the Roach Ravager with the bio. It hasn't been working in this match really for the most part. So he was saying, look, it's a defensive map. It'll be hard to get counterattacked. So he's going to build one tank at a time and just get a bunch of Widow mines out and just drop them all over the place and mess up Serral's economy. The first wave of mines, of course, we didn't really see them get any big hits. And after that, Serral's like, well, I can just kill you now because I have a huge army. And you probably got like 2 or 3 tanks and maybe 5 Marines. Which, when he went across the map with about 12 Ravagers and maybe 20 Lings, a couple Roaches, that's pretty much what Clem had. So he biled down the tanks. He biled down the Widow mines. Widow mines, like you were saying, they're not really great against Ravagers. If they're able to shoot them, sure, they'll one-shot them. But, you know, if you're a Zerg player and you're paying attention, you see the hole in the ground, you drop the bile on the mine. The worst thing that can happen is the mine gets up and tries to move, but it can't kill you without burrowing again. And thus, you find yourself a little bit stuck. So I think Serral just seized a really good opportunity.
Yeah.
And Clem, going into any other map, well, you're not going to try to do anything that level of greedy. So we can move on and get ready for whatever it is that's going to come next.
1,000,000% agreed. I mean, like, yeah, Clem was really just trying to get away with insane greed. But the way that Serral calls him is just incredible, because both players are, in my opinion, playing outside of their comfort zones. Like, neither really getting to display their best qualities in that game outside of just their amazing decision making, especially on the side of Serral, because that was a Serral that was on 44 workers and on 4 gases. So when he saw the opportunity, like you said, he did not hesitate for a second. He didn't say, you know what, I'm one of the best defensive players in the world, let those mines come at me. He didn't say, now I have an opportunity to take it to the late game to make a 80, 90 drones. Even I can maybe take some damage from those mines down the line and this game will extend. No, he said, I'm gonna kill you right now. I'm gonna take all the gases because I need gas for those Ravagers. He decides instantly on his unit of choice. He never stops making circlings. He has nothing for economy, and just kind of calls Clem on his greed. So very, very impressive, because it's usually the other way around, right? Like it's Terran that can kind of punish Zerg for their greed, and I can't recall the last time I saw Serral all in on 44 workers in this matchup on the big stage.
Yeah, it's not something that you're going to see regularly, but I think you can kind of agree, right, from a Zerg perspective anyway. If the Terran comes in, they throw that much at you and it doesn't really do anything, then you know, it's not like it's free to just throw those Widow mines and medevacs away. It costs something, and especially with the 2 factories, since, as we pointed out, he scouted it pretty early. He knew the barracks would be late, so there should not have ever been any doubt that there would be, like, you know, less than 10 Marines to defend for Clem, and that's, I think, why he felt so confident in doing that attack that, as you just pointed out, Cats, is not a common thing that Serral will try to force.
Yeah, very, very decisive from the Finnish Phenom. And this is a different game. However, it's going to be Clem opening with Banshees, possibly as a result of his opponent going for Roaches 3 times in a row. Though in the last game, I feel like Serral may not have gone Roaches if he hadn't spotted those factories as early as they were. And yeah, I mean, this game, it doesn't seem like it will be his weapon of choice. It is one of the better Lingbane Muta maps. It is wide open. There's a lot of bases to take down the line. And Muta Lingbane, obviously the most mobile, perhaps, army composition in the entire game, will take advantage of just how open and large the map is.
Yeah, and that's, I think, You know, makes sense. Very standard, very straightforward.
Ooh.
We haven't really seen Serral actually play that style out in this series yet. He's been loving the roaches, loving the early carapace upgrades. He wants to be durable because Clem is someone that, as we've talked about, he likes to hit fast. He likes to attack a lot. But in order to do that, you're usually splitting your forces up, or you're attacking early. You're trying to hit really sharp timings where you're not typically overwhelming with a large number of units. So while the Lings can deal with it, sure,
Wow.
you know, he's just been relying on other defensive capabilities. But man, this Spore Crawler coming in so late, the Banshee, the first Banshee getting, well, could have been 7 drones plus. Well, say that the aliens are still threatening that expansion too.
Yeah, and that is essential for Clem here because build order wise, I feel like Serral is completely unprepared for this, right? Like it catches him off guard, and it is the first Banshee rather than the first 2, which we usually see from Terran, as 2 will be able to one-shot the workers. But yeah, this catches Serral off guard, and that is very needed for a Clem that was going Banshee, perhaps anticipating that Serral would go for roaches a 4th time in a row, right? So I feel like Clem puts himself at a potential disadvantage if Serral doesn't go roaches, and if these Banshees don't really find the damage or as much damage as they just managed to find on the other side of the map. So the good news is we have a close game potentially in our hands.
Yeah, and I think for all the fans watching, you know, we all love it when we get to see the players do their best and kind of, you know, figure out their strategies, etc. Blah, 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 cats. We just want to see Marines splitting against Lings and Banes on the edge of creep while Mutalisks are counterattacking and harassing. Okay, let's face it. Everybody watching is hoping for at least one game of some classic Terran versus Zerg shenanigans. Not so much about the roaches, but more about those Lings being all over the place, the Terran trying to do these multi-pronged drops and giving us what for as far as the TVZ goes, because this is a matchup that can really deliver when we get to see 2 mechanical beasts like Clem and Serral push each other to the limit. And this is kind of what I'm talking about. He wants to move out and attack, and Serral's got a lot of Zerglings ready to immediately punish him. Door is open on the natural. Gets us around to the 4th. He's going to kill it. No cancel, cats. And he's in the mineral line of the natural, too.
Yeah, I'm not sure what Clem was looking at. He definitely was not expecting this. I mean, the Lynx even attacked the command center before the rest of the Lynx managed to get into the natural. So Clem definitely had a little bit more of a warning than you usually get against the likes of Serral and Raynor to close his doors. Not able to do it, however, and will get hard punished for it. 23 workers already have gone down, and on the other side, Serral looks to have enough. Bending speed is what he is waiting for before he chooses to collapse or chase off a creep. However, but with the Hellbat being an easy target, he will waddle on through. I'm not sure if that was the right call, as the bio will split behind the creep. And Clem is still kind of in this, Nate, but it's looking very dire in terms of economy.
Serral's done a good job of defending, right? He had the Queens, he had a bunch of Banelings. He has his Baneling speed already done. So makes pushing onto creep incredibly difficult. And that's just the 4th base of Serral that he's pushing at, right? The first 3 are mining just fine. He hasn't even taken the gas on his natural. He actually has that 5th base in the top left already done. So he's just about ready to go for that whenever he has an opportunity to saturate it. So he doesn't even need to rally the drones to this base. He could just sit here, defend this naked hatchery with nothing at it, and live his merry life. But look, we got Bane flank to the 3rd, another big run by headed to the natural, and he's brought some Banes just in case that door does get closed. But guess what? The door is still open. So he's here, and he's here to drink, take all the party favors with him.
Yeah, such confidence from Serral to push with so many of his units after having already done as much damage as he has. But this will force Clem into a very difficult position. However, Clem does find the hatchery here and the real estate because Serral has so much on the other side of the map. 15 additional workers have fallen for Clem, but he has mostly kept up in terms of worker production. So we see only, and I say only, a 19 worker gap between the 2. So I think Serral, again, I'll say it time and time again, he's one of the best players at knowing when to forfeit bases. And these 2 tanks actually from Clem not being paid attention to. Very uncharacteristic of the young French.
Huge pickup. Huge. Clem scans. He's like, oh my God, you've already got this base too? This one tank that was kind of forgotten about. He's trying to find the best place to shoot. Hard to calculate. And he's also going to be destroyed. And you know what? Clem has his +2 attack almost done. He never started +2 armor, cats. And I do not think that's a forgivable mistake in TVZ. Going for both of those upgrades at a time is not an option in this matchup. You have to get both. So I feel like we're really just seeing the impact of the economic damage coming through the resources that have been lost, the workers that have been killed. These Banes push it through. He actually has to cancel building the other part of the wall because he was trapped in there, so he just blows up the bunker instead. But Serral's got a really nice upgrade advantage, and he is getting ready to swarm this Terran army off. Creep Link spilling through Banes behind.
Yeah.
There's no creep here, but does he necessarily need it when Clem just has not been able to get damage done back to him outside of that first Banshee harass?
Yeah, I mean, all the control of the world may not save him as the last few links try to get the wraparound for those main links to collapse onto the army of Clem, but unable to find the final catch. Somehow, some way, Clem has kept up in terms of supply. His army is technically bigger than Serral's as well, and these Banshees are still putting on some of the best work out of all units on the side of Clem here, but Serral looking very, very strong and very poised to take potentially a 3-1 here as he is now stable. He has decided to go for the infestation pit, so feels like he can start transitioning into something else. It's not going to be the Spire this time around. It could have been an infestation pit, a Spire, or at this point a Hydra, then into Lurkers. We might still see a Lurker transition, but for the time being, he's going to be content just getting his Hive. And yeah, I feel like Clem is in all sorts of trouble. Now dropping his 4th nade. That is late.
Yeah, well, you don't have an infinite amount of money to work with, even with mules. Unfortunately, the mules themselves do still need mineral patches to harvest. So the only reason why that 3rd base is as fresh as it is for Clem is because his workers have been killed about 700 times in this game already. Drop at the bottom right base is going to be routed back for the time being. That medevac on the left looked like it wanted, or the Banshee, excuse me, wanted to go into the main, and it was shoved back as well. You can see that without attack upgrades, the Banshee now takes 3 hits to kill a drone since the Carapace is done. So Banshees just kind of generally fall off the longer it goes because you're not usually investing into the upgrades. But then again, we rarely see them alive this late into the game too.
Yeah, I mean, this game is looking so difficult for Clem. I'm trying to think of how he's gonna get back into it. Perhaps just sitting back and kind of maxing out or something.
Yeah,
might
no
be
idea.
one of his. Yeah, I mean, it's so very difficult, right? When I say, of course, that he is late to the 4th, I don't mean like he was slow to drop it or sloppy in the process. It's more like when Serral realizes that he has stabilized, he starts his tech. At the same time, Clem will also realize that Serral has stabilized. That was a nice Widowmine shot. So he should just continue on with the transition. So he by that standard, he drops his 4th as early as I would expect him to drop any 4th, because that's when he thinks, okay, I guess I'm not going to be able to break you. The problem is that the game leading up until that point has been very, very good for Serral. And let's see if Clem is going to be able to find something. This might be a small opening. Already the links are here from Serral, and now with the main links arriving as well, Clem will be forced up his medevacs in a very timely fashion.
It was so close to having an opportunity to finally strike back, that Serral has been largely bulletproof in this series on the defense. Even without the roaches as his backbone, he's still just been so hard for Clem to break. And we've got these multi-prong drops. They're all over. He's trying to hit on the south. He's trying to hit in the west. He's trying to hit in the south and the west at the same time, even sometimes. But it doesn't seem to be adding up. Serral is just playing crazy fast. He's got this huge Lingbane army. To his credit, maybe the one thing that if we're looking for things to criticize, I don't know why you would want to do that, but he's building 2 lurker dens at once. So there you go. Even gods sometimes don't want to have to wait for one upgrade to finish to start the next. So even that, there's some sort of strategical significance we could probably glean out of it.
I mean, right next to each other and at the same time. So I think we can safely say that this is an option that he is taking consciously, and an option that he wants to do, because he just probably feels like if he arrives to lurkers early enough, he is just in that dominant of a position. He can definitely afford this at this point in time. The mines are gonna find just a couple of workers, maybe 3 more here, almost the queen, but that is not enough. 5 workers at this stage to really
Nidus is on the way too.
Yeah,
and Nidus is on the way as well. And I love this, because I think this is what Serral's plan is going to be: defend. You get a bunch of lurkers. You can get both upgrades at the same time. But if he gets a Nidus network inside the main base of Clem, and we get lurkers that burrow on the production, there will be very little that Clem can do about it. He's busy trying to micro this fight at the southeast tower, fighting over a bit of creeped up space on the map. And both of those upgrades do begin. And here it is. The worm begins to tunnel. So if you're Serral, you want to distract, you want to make it hard to see what's going on here. Let's not forget, the Zerglings, they do not have adrenal glands yet. He hasn't started it either. But those getting on top of the production. They are also going to rip those buildings apart.
Yeah, I mean, there's so little here from Clem, right? I look at the units. There's 3 tanks. They're all going to be needed here to answer these lurkers. Actually, the mines burrow. Maybe they get some shots off, and Serral not really reinforcing this Nidus for the time being. So actually, Clem will be able to have a very unconventional hold there with mines against lurkers. And I mean, yeah,
Widow mines are really good, man.
If they
Widow mines are really good.
Yeah.
If you've got 2 factories pumping those bad boys out, I feel like Widow mines look weakest when you just only have a couple of them, because people are like, well, you just need 1 mine, set and forget, and it kills everything. And that might be true, but that's only if the opponent's not paying attention. Now, if you have 10 Widow mines, it doesn't matter if they're paying attention. Trying to take a favorable trade against that is always going to be hard, and especially with a Nidus network, you know where the units are going to pop out. So good denial there, because that means he doesn't really have the lurker count that he would want for defending other areas.
Yeah, Clem was definitely in position for that, or in position enough with some units. And again, an unconventional hold. Serral trying to sneak on through with lurkers here and there, trying to create chaos for this Nidus. But this time around, it's expected. It has already been revealed. And Clem will be on the lookout. So already producing some additional Marauders as well. That's going to make it even easier for him to deal with future Nidus attempts. And it's going to make it easier for him to kind of spread his bio and potentially deal with this lurker. So Clem looking for some transitions. The ghosts are now on the way. And my God, last time we saw Clem transition into those ghosts and into the later game in this matchup against the laser, he looked phenomenal. So maybe there is yet still hope for the young French.
Now, perhaps he's doing his best. He's taking his swings that he can. The Nidus has not accomplished much. I would have loved to seen Serral try to put a Nidus somewhere else. I feel like that main base is a really big priority target. He's gone toward the northeast part of the main. Okay, that's a little bit better. It's not the same obvious spot. And there's still a lot of very critical infrastructure here, including all of the supply depots.
I absolutely love this from Serral. He identifies that the Nidus in the main will go off, so decides to abandon a position that was already strong at the 3rd with the lurkers, leaving just 1 behind to harass that mineral line and pulling the rest of the lurkers back into the main. And this is going to make things near impossible for Clem. So wow, incredible decision making here from the Finn. He is going to get 2 more lurkers out, but now there's ghosts on board. So 14 workers have gone down, 59 remaining from Clem. A lot of supply depots also went down there. So all in all, a pretty good set of moments here from Serral, but answered. Now at the Planetary Fortress, it looks like there is no hope for it. And Serral making some beautiful, beautiful moves and trades here. Clem on the ropes, Nate.
Yeah, he got that Planetary Fortress as well, so he's capped as far as supply goes. All of his depots pretty much obliterated in that Nidus attack. That's one of those things that you don't normally think about until it already happens, and you're thinking, oh my goodness, maybe he didn't need to kill anything other than my depots, because now I've got to spend a couple thousand minerals to get back up there. And I would say, hey, maybe he'd want to use the supply drop, but he's had to save all of his energy for scans. He's just been playing whack-a-mole with these lurkers everywhere. And there's the parasitic bombs onto the medevac. So he's like, oh, you're gonna load up and fly away? Cool. Maybe I'll blow some of you up in midair then.
Yeah, that was awesome. That's awesome. A very timely use to use the parasitic bombs, because now Clem has to micro on 2 fronts. He has to split the medevacs and pick up, which is already, I mean, I don't know how Terran players at this level even manage to pick up their bio half of the time, right? It's very elegant movement required just for that, never mind splitting the medevacs against parasitic bombs. But I mean, Clem is really in a tough position. When I saw the ghosts, I got a little bit excited, Nate. I thought this game could go longer, but Clem again gets caught on the other side of the map, and with not enough defenses set up, a more or less triple prong attack from Serral. No, not even more or less, maybe more than 3 prongs was what it was.
The quadra prong.
I think it might have been, right? Like at least 3 fronts from Serral at the same time do tax Clem so dearly. And now it's all about the Finn. He is moving in. This Planetary Fortress no doubt will fall. And with that, most of the chances of Clem, if they weren't already down the drain, this is looking impossible.
Yeah, it's going to do another number onto the supply infrastructure, as Widow Mine Drop does kill a couple drones, but I mean, Serral, he's at 74 workers. He's got a large number of hatcheries, so the larva capabilities of replenishing that are definitely already set in motion. And this has just been, this whole series is just kind of like, it feels like Clem tries to punch Serral, but his punches just aren't as fast and strong as we're used to. And Serral's like, I haven't really lost a step. So if you haven't been improving since the last time we played, I am just going to consistently overwhelm you. And that's just what it feels like. The ghosts are the strongest tools that we have here for Clem against this lurker setup. but this is the first game where we've actually had it get to this point. And gets another snipe. Good pick off on the Viper. This is what we want to see. The problem is there's not really a whole lot behind this, you know?
Yeah, the economy.
The economy is in shambles, as it were.
It really is. I mean, 46 workers, and Serral's not going to stop with these counterattacks. And you see the potential from those Clem ghosts, right? Like, he is actually an incredible player when it comes to this part of the game as well. And I would have loved nothing more to see that the two of the best macro players in this matchup go at it on even footing. But it's been Clem on the back foot the entire time. And I love what he's doing there. When he pushes with his army, he trades effectively, and he takes a fourth base that is consistent with his positioning, right? Like, he is defending as he attacks by being on the aggression. But I mean, unfortunately for him, he's gonna need to find some magical snipes, and he's gonna have to really it's really gonna be a lot of trading that is gonna have to be in his favor before he can really stabilize and we can call this a game again.
Now, there is one weird thing that is working pretty well in Clem's favor, and I think it's part of why he hasn't been taken down. Serral never got adrenal glands for his lings, so he's missing a pretty ludicrous upgrade for his army, but he may not need it anyway. He's going to catch the bio army out of the northwest tower. Lurkers are going to burrow. Mine shots are dragged onto the bio by those Zerglings, and well, he was going to try to take that base, but yes, not anymore. Serral takes it 3-1.